Hey everyone, welcome back. This is going to be part two of our little mini series to get us kick-started for the Ottawa Senators upcoming season. And we're going to be talking about one guy who stands at the center of this Senators push to make the postseason after a long and tedious drought. And it's the one and only Linus Ullmark. Now, Linus Ullmark, when he came to Ottawa, he was a very vocal guy. I think he started to grow on Sens fans, and that kind of fan favorite role that some players enter, uh, they usually have to play on the team for a bit or build some rapport before they become that fan favorite. But Linus Ullmark has become that before even playing a game for the Ottawa Senators. And that's just through his roles with the media, the Sens breakaway videos, some of the Sens events he's been to. One of my friends got to meet him at the closed media event, and she was raving about how great Linus Ullmark was and personable he was. So it seems like this is like a gem type guy. And boom, he's now a fan favorite. He hasn't played a single game for the Sens, and he is central to the Sens team making the playoffs this season if they're to do so. So off the top, Matt, how did you feel? How do you feel about his presence in Ottawa and his rise to popularity here with the fan base?
Well, I don't think it's really surprising at all. He's a really outspoken guy, extremely confident, and has a good demeanor about him. Very charismatic. Everything you see about him, um, just makes you want to like him. And I think the most likable thing about him for Sens fans is that he stops pucks at an incredible rate. Um, and that for me right now is the most important thing you can ask for in a goalie. Um, but on top of that, as I said, like he just seems like a really genuine person. And I watched a documentary even before he was, or I wouldn't say a documentary, but a little 20-minute video on him, and his family, and some of the struggles that his family in Sweden faced with his dad's alcoholism. And it was just like really raw and genuine, and I don't think you get a lot of that from NHL players. um and it just so happened that you got that from like the reigning Vesna winner, uh who you know is coming to the Sens, and they need a breath of fresh air. I don't remember much of any media coverage on Corpusalo. Like I barely knew who the guy was. Um and the same with Matt Murray. And I think it feels like with Olmark, the media team as it stands right now is putting a lot of eggs in the basket that is Olmark, because he's the guy, and he's the guy that they are banking on to get us to the playoffs.
Then, what were your thoughts when, well, obviously we talked about when Olmark was brought in, but since then and all the media attention he's gotten in the city, where are your thoughts or vibes at with him?
Yeah, listen, seems like a great guy. Good for him. If he stops pucks, I will like him and support him, and if he doesn't, I will want his ass. So I don't know what else to
I
tell you.
mean, that sounds like you would also like him in that situation.
Yeah, it
No,
kind of does.
I that's that's fair. I'll put that in hindsight. Um, listen, it comes down to performance, and I think it's cool that fans are excited to have him here. That's great. Fandom is fun. It's fun to be a fan. But I'm going in with zero expectations because there's not much point building up another goalie that we're hoping will fix our abysmal goaltending problems. Uh, I'm just gonna wait until the season starts, and even then, I'm gonna try and give it, 10, 15 games before I form much of an opinion on the guy. It's a low bar he has to clear. If you thought my days of shitting on Corpusalo are done, they're not. I'm here to do it again. He sucked. He's the worst goalie I've ever seen play for our team. So it's a low bar to clear, but he has to clear it. And until he clears it, I don't care if he's nice. I don't know what to tell you. I don't care his family story. I don't care if he is cool. Like, save some bucks, make some saves, give us some wins. Please let the misery end. That's it.
Fair enough, Bennett. Some of us
Yeah.
just want to see results. I can't I
Yeah.
can't hate that about you. Um, for me, I like to get attached to certain stories of players. And with Matt and I, we were actually talking about this before the show because we're about to talk about this next. It's not a big deal, but we were talking and we were saying, Corpusalo, he comes in Ottawa, he's like soft spoken, not much of one to have this kind of aura of hype around him. But he brings in one of the sharpest Sens masks that we've ever seen. That was a
Yep.
killer Sens mask. We're like, man, that looks baller. He's gonna stop some pucks. And didn't quite work out that way. Still got to go get my Corpusalo jersey restitched, pending on that one. But
Please don't get Ullmark on the back. Please just get
hey,
someone where the team's hopes of the playoffs do not rest on whether or not you've jinxed him.
so I will say the last time before the Corpusalo jersey, the last time I got a Sens jersey was Craig Anderson, and I got his jersey after the Sens trade for him, and he brought us to the playoffs in 2012. So I'm 50-50 right now. So, but I promise I won't get an Ullmark jersey. I will wait and see what happens. But with Ullmark,
You should get a Kuhlman jersey.
I'm gonna ignore that one. But with Ullmark, he's been the complete
It's
opposite.
lower stakes that way.
Yeah, true, but also people would think I'm nuts. So
Fair.
with Ullmark, he's got this aura around him. I think a lot of people are taking a shine to him. I totally can appreciate that you got to see results. And hey, I'm the same way. Like we talked about coming in the show, this is our 6th season that we're covering. Still haven't covered a single playoff game.
Zero.
Tough scenes from here in the burbs of Ottawa. So definitely got to see that. But are there any other thoughts? Any other thoughts on Ullmark's mask? Because that's what I was originally alluding to.
I think it's cool as hell. I really liked the integration of Patrick Laleem's OG Martian helmet. I liked some of the Nordic vibes that Ullmark kind of instilled on the mask. I like that it's kind of a matte finish and not shiny, but that's personal preference. And I like his homage to his family with the little bears on the back. A1. I think it's a very good mask, but I do have to agree. Corpusalo's mask last year was probably a top 3 Senators goalie mask of all time. But if Ullmark makes a lot of saves, he'll just pop himself right into that spot for me. So won't be very difficult because the things we're hearing and seeing from Ullmark is awesome. Drake Batherson said on Coming in Hot apparently that he hadn't scored on Ullmark for 2 days straight. And that's Drake Batherson, who is a very good hockey player. So that's exciting. I'm really excited. His gear is pretty similar to what he was wearing in Boston, except the yellow and black is now red and black. I wish there was a little more gold in there, but we can't get what we want sometimes, and that's okay.
It's an improvement.
We got
from
a
base
Vezina
white
winning goalie, so that to me is all that matters. All in all, I'm super stoked about Ullmark, and the vibes here at the Naif household are immaculate. And I am ready to be heard again.
As we all are, as we do this podcast yet again, hoping that maybe this time things will be different.
Yeah. I said earlier that 6 seasons in a movie, and that's a Community reference, but the movie will be the playoffs. So it's been foretold. And now that has been come about, we are good. Let's end the podcast. We can we can wait till playoffs happen, and then we can come back to this moment.
Uh, pending my call here at the NHL, looks like
Okay.
Matt is being suspended for 41 games for betting on the Ottawa Senators.
Yeah, damn.
You guys make some compelling points about being ready to get hurt again. I don't know that I am. I think that when it comes to Linus Ullmark, I'm guarding my heart against being hurt, and I am not getting emotionally invested in the guy until the unlikely scenario that we extend him, or the somewhat more likely scenario that he at least gets us into the playoffs, and then I'll have some room in my heart for the guy. But I've been disappointed too many times by our goaltending rodeo in the last few seasons. I'm taking myself out of the dating pool. I'm looking for a long-term commitment.
Do you so you don't think Allmark's gonna extend?
I truly cannot see a scenario where he would. And I'm like, why would he? Like he would be shooting himself in the foot to sign here. Or just like anywhere, like he could hit free agency and just make a shit ton of money. I really just don't see what his motivation, unless if
Mhm.
like, his, I don't know, dog falls in love with another dog here in Ottawa and he really wants to keep the family together. Like I really just don't see a scenario in which he decided to commit to this team before the end of one season. Um Unless if like the team gets off to like rails off like 30 wins in the first half of the year and they're able to convince him to stay. I like the Jeremy Swayman contract situation in Boston, could set the going rate for goalies really high depending on the outcome of those negotiations. I think if he went and hit free agency as a former Vezina winner, he could just make a massive payday that would set himself up for life. And I think the Sens are going to try and I because of the fact that we don't have a shit ton of cap space, I think that we'll probably try and, sign him to like a hometown discount, but this isn't his hometown. He doesn't owe us anything. He was traded here. I don't want to say against his will. That makes it sound like bad. Like he seems happy enough to be here, but the rumor that I had heard was that he hadn't bothered putting Ottawa on his no trade list because we had signed that albatross of a Corpusalo deal, and that's why he was traded before July 1st, because he would have been able to submit a new no trade list, and Ottawa probably would have been on it, and that's why the deal got done when it did. I don't see it. I want to
Apparently,
believe, but I
yeah.
give the probability like 5-10%.
I think with that, Allmark also clarified he never had Ottawa on the list ever.
Right.
So take that with what you will.
Yeah. I I I think it would have been on the list once he realized that, like, they were in the market for a goalie.
I think I
But
also
I don't know, none of us know, like, none
Oh
of us
yeah,
know the guy's
absolutely.
heart, but it's like, if
Yeah.
I were Linus Ullmark, I would not sign in Ottawa, not because Ottawa sucks or the team sucks or anything, because, like, he has players only have a couple of opportunities in their career to hit free agency and make, like, a serious payday, and I just don't think that Ottawa is gonna have the capacity to offer him the kind of deal that he could probably get if he hit free agency, unless if we make some other moves as well. Like if we buy out Norris or something, and in order to make room for an Allmark extension, and he likes it here and he likes the vibe of the city and the team and he wants to stay, maybe. But I just don't see this likely.
See, like for me, Allmark, he already got to free agency when he was with Buffalo. He was playing great in Buffalo, wanted to sign. He said when Boston came calling, it was a no-brainer to go to a competitive team like that. But then coming to Ottawa, he said he's always wanted to play in Canada. Now, that could potentially change because we know how rabid Canadian fan bases can be. That said, it's a city where it's really good to raise a young family. He's 31. So there's a possibility, I think, that if he wanted to extend long term, he understands that he's in his 30s. He's not like Saros, who is hitting
And
that.
he's definitely not Swayman in the age range.
No, yeah. And Swayman's 25. And also, Boston lost their leverage by trading Omark before
Yeah.
signing Swayman. So that was a bad move by them, but things happen as they happen. Now, with Ottawa, I think what benefits them is hypothetically, I don't think it would happen because he'll be almost 32 by the time the season ends, but they could offer him an 8-year deal and they could, front load that contract. And we've seen Michael Andlauer willing to spend money, not just on the arena, and not just on NHL players, but look at the AHL. How many players Ottawa went out and signed who were getting two-way contracts where they were actually being paid a significant amount of money in the AHL. Usually a two-way AHL contract, they'll get like 70K. Some of the players that Ottawa was signing were getting over 100K
Yeah.
as an AHL two-way deal. And that's not something that Ottawa ever did prior to Andlauer coming in. And I know that seems insignificant, just like, we're talking about giving players an extra 50, 60 plus K. But I think that says a lot. If you're willing to spend that much money on your minor league team to bring in some free agents, it seems like Ryan Bonus has a lot more to work with there. And I think that translates throughout the organization. And the salary cap's going to go up another 4 million next summer. So you put that on top of losing some of the dead weight that you'll have on the roster, which I know we like to think is all gone, but we do still have at least one defenseman and potentially players elsewhere who if Claude Giroux decides he wants to go elsewhere, that's a lot of money. And Ottawa also hasn't found a good goaltender since Craig Anderson left.
Yeah.
So I think that they're looking for any reason to find a guy and lock them down long term. So for me, it's if Linus Ullmark really likes the city and he sees it as a place where his family can grow, and it's honestly like me being as someone who's been to Stockholm and lived in Ottawa, it's I don't want to say eerily similar, but they give off similar vibes. Obviously, Ottawa doesn't have like the ocean right there, but when it comes to the vibe, they both have similar vibes. So I could see why he would feel more at home here than maybe in another city. I think there's some draws in that sense. So we'll wait and see. I was going to ask you guys what you predicted his contract would be if he were to get one from Ottawa. Personally, I think it would be between 7 and 8 mil a season if he were to have a season like he had in Boston, where he put up, a 915 save percentage this past season, a 938 the season before, and 917 the 2 years before that. So he's been a very consistent goalie. Obviously, had an excellent year in 2022-23, but even at a 915 save percentage, that's well above league average, which this year was at like 900. So I think you're going to be paying him close to Saros money, but maybe with less term. That's where I'm putting him, but I'll maybe hand it over to one of you guys and get your opinions on, even if you don't think it's with Ottawa, what his contract would be.
I'll let Bennett go first because I want to hear it.
Yeah, I mean, if only there was like a website where one could easily browse and view contracts from around the league. And if only it hadn't been purchased by the greedy Washington Capitals. Um, Listen, I think he's easily like a 6, 7, $8 million a year goalie in terms of AAV. I think that the main sticking point in any contract negotiation, whether it's here or with another team, is going to be term for a 31-year-old player. I think that lots of teams would be willing to offer him short-term money, but I don't know how many of them are going to be willing to offer him that kind of money over 4, 5, 6 seasons. So yeah, it's interesting to see where that one could go. He is, yeah. I still don't. I still suspect it's just not going to work in Ottawa. There's just not a lot of runway to get it done. The prospect of free agency is enticing for a player, whatever part of their career that they're in. And I mean, like this league has seen some extremely large paydays for guys that were 30 plus. Now it's much more in vogue to sign players to huge contracts when they're young. But plenty of players have hit 30 and still signed big deals. And I think that he could, with some reasonable expectation, do that. So yeah, I think like a 4 or 5 year deal at 6.5, 7 million is where I could see him slotting in. Is that a deal that the Sens could do? Possibly with some maneuvering of the cap. Is that something that Ullmark would want to do? Less possible, but it's it certainly could happen. But I think there's gonna be a lot of teams calling. And
Yeah,
of course, the other thing to consider too is that if come December the wheels have come off and the Senators are not a playoff team, we basically have to trade him
yeah,
because he's not going to want to sign here, presumably, if we're not contending, and he's on an expiring deal. So that could render the point moot
yeah.
if uh, if uh, if the team isn't good.
Yeah, I think that's like absolute nightmare fuel. And
Yeah,
I don't even
yeah.
want to think about it because bums me out. Uh but so there is still a couple sites that do what Cap Friendly did, and Puckpedia is one of them. And if you look, the current Vesna winner, Connor Hellebuck, just signed last year for 8.5. And I think a lot of people would argue that Allmark is not as good as Connor Hellebuck. That just sounded weird coming out of my mouth. But anyways, um, but I think there's a case to be made that if Ottawa offered him a 6 by $7.5 million contract that was, more front loaded than anything, um, he'd consider it. And I'll tell you why. Because this is the guy that has talked about family his entire career. Um, and uprooting his family is not something that he wants to have to do again. And obviously, this is the biggest grain of salt point, but yes, he did buy a house. And of course, it's a very expensive house. But real estate's always a good investment. And that's your real investment talk with Matt. But to me, it's just when you come in and you have a history of wanting to just be around your family as much as possible. I remember he blocked a trade last year to someone on his no trade list because it was too time zone that was prohibitive to talking to his family. Um, and I can confidently say, out of the 32 teams in the league, Ottawa is probably one of the best to actually raise a family in. And you have the poster boy of Sweden and Ottawa in Daniel Alfredson, who left Sweden and never went back because he lived in Ottawa. You have one of his best friends in Anton Forsberg, who lives in Ottawa, who is going to probably sell him on staying in Ottawa and then turn around and hope he gets a deal from Steve Stayhouse after a good season. There are, like, to me, there are things that would indicate he will sign, and I think he will. But that's probably copium on my part, a little bit of copium, and some rational points. But all this to say, we're not in Linus Allmark's head. We don't know. If we are not good, he absolutely will not sign. But the amount of starters on good teams, every good team has a solid starter. Bad teams don't have good starters. And for him to go to a bad team to be a starter for very good money may just not make sense. And he said, well, Ottawa's not quite that high, but they're further ahead of, Chicago. I'm gonna pick them because I'm 31 and I want to get, like, get a shot at a cup, and I want to do this, that, and the other thing. That's just my opinion and point of view on it. I can hear yours. I just don't see it going that way. But as I said, probably a little copium, probably a couple other things, So
And I think that that's a good place to leave the Allmark conversation. We'll see what happens this season, I think, and then we can touch back in this conversation. Either have Bennett saying, "You know what, for once, you guys are right," or maybe we'll be begging Bennett for forgiveness, and we shall see which one it is. But we'll definitely revisit this probably in December, if not earlier, if something really disastrous happens. Let's hope not. So, thank you for the YouTube viewers for checking out this episode. We will have one more coming your way. For the audio listeners, stay tuned. The final part of this preseason episode shenanigans is coming soon.